Welcome back to Film Studio Taku. Sorry it's been a while, I had a little bit of a camera issue and it's more or less sorted out now. So Nikon has made a big announcement and a pre-order is now available for the Nikon Z9, and I know a lot of professionals have been looking forward to it, and I think a lot of non-professionals are noticing this camera and very curious about it. I'm on script today. It's way too much I want to say, and I don't think this is the best angle. I'm kind of looking above the camera. I need to get a teleprompter. It's on my list of things to get. Sorry. So here we go. Welcome to all the future Nikon fans. Some of us knew what was coming. For many, this was understandably not on their radar. The Nikon Z9 flagship has been released for pre-order. Before I dive into this, firstly I want to say that for the first time ever I have affiliate links down below. Please have a look, and if you want to buy the Z9, please by all means click on my link. I get a very small percentage of that, but it does help to keep this channel going. I said recently that I was unlikely to get the Z9 due to the price, the weight, and the size, and though the first two pretty much hold true, I think, especially regarding price versus my current budget, the size is kind of a nice surprise here, and I'll get into that a little bit more later. But what I really want to say is, to anyone like me that finds it hard to justify spending more than $5,000 for a camera, but maybe is either coming into the full frame camera field fresh or suddenly sort of awake to what Nikon has to offer, let me first say that much of what you're going to see in reviews regarding the picture quality is already available on the Z6 and Z7 original and the Mark II versions. But even more importantly, much of what is going to make the Z9 really stand out from the current pack of cameras is obviously going to come to future Nikon cameras, including the likely soon to be announced Z8 and any other future full frame cameras or higher end APS-C cameras from Nikon. Something to bear in mind though is Nikon's DSLRs have traditionally covered a fairly wide range of price points and intended users. So with essentially only 3 previous Z-mount cameras, not going to count the Mark IIs really as separate cameras, nor am I going to count the rehoused Z50, you know, the retro funky one. But we're still really in the infancy, or at very best elementary stages of what Nikon intends for the Z-mount, which is essentially a relatively painless transfer from their DSLR line to the Z-mount mirrorless system. And beyond the advantages that the super large shallow Z-mount offers, the technology will continue moving forward as it always has. We all wanted Nikon to step on the gas, but they've had, I would say they played a very smart game, releasing only what was needed to set the stage. Now that it's set, here we go. The Z9 is a continuation of the D series design with a built-in vertical grip, which many are describing for the Z9 as the most comfortable grip Nikon has produced. From what I've seen, it looks very similar ergonomically to the Olympus OM EMX1, I hope I said that right, which is, in my opinion, the most comfortable camera to hold in existence, pretty much. If you want a teaser of what the Z9 is likely going to feel like in your hands, I would say go find an EMX1 at a retailer and hold it in your hand, roll it around in your hands, caress it, just leave the store before the security comes and hoses you down. With a stacked dual-coated 1 fluorine and 1 electroconductive coating sensor and a newly developed XP7 processor claimed to be 10 times faster at calculations than the previous Z6 II and Z7 II cameras, and with internal 10-bit 8K resolution up to 60 frames per second, 4K resolution up to 120 frames per second, and internal RAW coming in 2022, the Z9 leaves very little, at least on paper, to be desired in video capability. Although 1080p 240 frames per second or even higher frame rates would pretty much be at the top of my list for things that are missing, I would be very surprised if Nikon doesn't add this ability soon, either because it was always planned as a firmware update or because of popular demand. I think something more like 1440p, 240 frames per second, 1440, should easily be possible with the processing power we have here. And for me, 1440 has always been kind of a sweet spot in vertical resolution. It just has a little bit more punch and clarity over 1080p, and I think most people really don't see the difference between 1440 and 4K. I see it, and I know some of you do, but a lot of people don't. And it's good enough resolution in my book. The other very important thing that remains to be seen, though, is whether or not all of these resolutions or frame rates will be down-resed from the full sensor readout, or if we're going to get the line skipped, subpar, pixel bin type image that we saw on both Z7s. The Z6, of course, had full sensor readout, and it shows in the superb video image quality of that camera, even in 8-bit. Now, in regards to photography, it's really hard to imagine anyone having any negatives to say at this point. Nikon is claiming 0 EVF blackout and 0 lag with 20 frames per second full resolution, lossless compressed raw files with a 1000 plus shot buffer, which means about 50 seconds or 50 plus seconds of continuous shooting, which is more than anyone would need except in the most extreme scenarios. Few would ever need a 50-second burst, but a more likely scenario is multiple 3 to 5 second bursts in rapid succession to capture fast wildlife or sports action over several minutes, where with most cameras the buffer does fill up and you find yourself not being able to take as many shots in subsequential bursts, or at least not as quickly. The Z9 is going to make it pretty hard. It's going to make filling that buffer almost a challenge, I think, for 99% of the intended users. The Z9 is also able to shoot 30 frames per second in full resolution JPEG and 120 frames per second at a resolution of 11 megapixels, which is just a few megapixels above 4K resolution, in case anyone's wondering. So still pretty good resolution for most scenarios. Personally, I've been shooting everything in RAW plus JPEG for the past 2 years with my Z6, but I will say that I'm often very satisfied with a JPEG straight out of camera, so long as I have my exposure dialed in and have the right white balance for the scene. Auto usually gives pretty pleasing results, though I like to get a little bit more creative with my color profiles with JPEGs and customize the profiles. But Nikon's flat profile is actually really good even with JPEGs at preserving details and colors, and allows more grading ability than any other JPEG files that I've worked with. JPEGs. Obviously, though, Nikon RAW files retain a lot more detail in the shadows and highlights, and I think I would really rarely opt for the 120 frames per second JPEG only shooting, at least personally. I do see some situations though where I would use it. And on a related note, though, it seems compressed, or rather uncompressed RAW is no longer an option. And I know very well that basically everyone, including Nikon, states that compressed lossless is just that, lossless. And I'm sure it is and retains all the detail and information, but for me personally, and maybe it's just a kind of mental, trick, so to speak, but when I shoot RAW uncompressed and take them into Darktable to edit them, for some reason they seem to edit a little easier, and I'm able to at least it feels like I'm pulling details out of the shadows more easily. So it just kind of feels like I need less steps to be able to pull up some of the shadows and details and even colors. This is probably just a mental thing. Sometimes you believe something and it just happens, and I'm definitely willing to believe that's a possibility, but it's one of those things where if I feel that way and if I'm seeing that, I'm more comfortable doing that, and I don't mind the file space, honestly, especially with hard drives being as cheap as they are these days. But I welcome any respectful discussion on this in the comments below. So that aside, probably the biggest surprise for most of us is something that's actually missing from this camera, and that's the shutter. There is no mechanical shutter. So Nikon claims because the readout speed is so high that there's really no issue regarding rolling shutter due to the electronic shutter readout speed. All the samples I've seen confirm this, but as of the time of making this video, I've not yet seen any examples using artificial lights where electronic shutters often leave kind of nasty banding across the images. I'm going on a leap of faith here, though, based on Nikon's reputation for professional quality cameras and the fact that this is a flagship camera. This is a non-issue, and I expect to confirm this very soon. There is a shutter-like mechanism, or looking like anyways, mechanism that protects the sensor when a lens is detached, which is great, but it is for this purpose only, just to be clear, in case anyone's confused about that. And in no way, shape, or form is it for taking photos. Combined with the electrostatic coating though, which is presumably to repel dust like the 10-year-old Nikon Z series cameras had from Panasonic, and still have, I believe, this should result in far less sensor cleanings. I personally clean my Z6 sensor at least once a month, sometimes once a week, if I'm changing lenses outdoors a lot, and if I'm doing it daily, I kind of do it daily. Especially during like the sakura, the cherry blossom season here, where I'm pretty much guaranteed if I take off the lens, some pollen's going to get in there and I have to clean it. There's also an option for an audible shutter for those that worry about not knowing whether or not they're taking photos. Obviously this is just an audio sound, it's not a real shutter sound, but it can be useful, and it's something I believe the Z6 and Z7 have as well, though I never use it. I think I used it in the very beginning, so don't quote me on that though. I may or may not do a dive soon into the menu and see if I can find that, if it actually does exist or if it's just a false memory. The human brain is organic. Yeah, it's not always consistent. The camera boasts a very fast maximum shutter speed of 1/32,000th of a second, which is a big leap from my Z6's already very fast 1/8,000th of a second maximum shutter speed. There's a low, or actually they're calling a starlight mode, which is supposed to make it much easier to autofocus on stars. Personally, I have no issues quickly manually focusing with a Z6, as the focus peaking works really good for this. It gives you a really clear representation of the stars, and then I find that just by dialing it down till the little peaks get to be as small as possible, it's showing that the stars are basically shrinking down to as small as possible. That means you're very sharp focus on them, and it works very well for me with all of my lenses. So personally, if you're shooting for the stars Nikon, so to speak, give us something like Pentax star tracking mode. I think that would be much more exciting and useful in my opinion. So some other notes, real quick, going through some of these. The Z9 will have 24-bit linear PCM audio, which should be great. As mentioned, the size is a nice surprise, being 20% smaller than D6 and shorter than the Z6 and Z7, a little bit fatter but shorter. It is still a little bit heavier though, and thicker, as I mentioned. But this makes it a lot more tempting for me personally than I expected, and though for the time being it's not feasible for my budget, it's something that I'm toying with the notion. I'm kind of right now calculating what would I have to not only save, but what would I have to sell. There's things in this house, and you know, I got a bunch of drones that I don't use really, that I probably should be selling off, so maybe we'll see. So Nikon has also released an FTZ2 for pre-order, which should be the same. By the way, all this stuff, all the other stuff that's been released is going to be in the affiliate links below. So Nikon has released the FTZ2 for pre-order, which should be the same in terms of functionality. So no older screw type autofocus adaptation for older Nikon f-mount lenses like some were hoping. It does, however, remove altogether the foot, which some will be really happy about. It definitely was an annoyance for me at certain times where it became impossible to remove the lens with the FTZ adapter at the same time because of clearance issues, whether it be on a tripod or a cage, or quite a few different scenarios. However, I do think a removable foot, like on a lot of adapters, would have been a better option than just completely removing it, because the foot's 1/4-inch thread honestly comes in very handy for certain mounting scenarios, and can even be used to attach a handle to balance and take the weight off some heavier lenses, or just to mount it on the FTZ rather than the body, again taking some of the weight off the actual mount. Regardless, even if I don't pick up the Z9, I think I will probably get the FTZ2 for general use, since in most situations it'll be more convenient for me. And especially because I actually been using a cage recently. I just picked it up on sale, and I'm going to be doing a little review on that soon. So Nikon also has released a 100 to 400 millimeter S lens for pre-order, which looks very promising. Affiliate links down below. 24 to 120 f4 S lens for those that like the 24 to 70 f4 lens but want a little bit more reach. And there's also a couple other lenses which I'm going to link below. I'm sorry, I forgot to look for the specific names. I think one is something like a 100 to, no, I'm sorry, it has a built-in teleconverter that you can actually switch on the fly to increase your length. Anyways, link's going to be below, or maybe I'll just edit me in pajamas right now saying what it was. So Nikon also claims that the Nikon Z9 is going to have the brightest viewfinder available. I'm very curious to see how it does in near black situations. Right now with the Z6 I often get pixel blocks when I'm in very dark areas that are initially I thought would be actually in the video when I first started using my Z6 2 years ago, and they don't show up in the video thankfully, but it's really annoying when I'm shooting and I see all these like Legos and then in my image. So Z9 also has illuminated buttons, which is awesome. That alone makes me want one, but again, $5,500 versus what I want is it's a big leap. It's just got one large battery, which is the same apparently as like the D6. I'm very curious though how that works as far as like if you're doing continuous time lapses. I know it's a big battery, I know it lasts a long time, but I want to know, is it hot swappable? Do you have to live power it via USB to do this, or is there some sort of internal, like maybe capacitors that let it last long enough while you swap out another battery? I really don't know how that works with professional level cameras. I'm sure somebody can tell me in the comments below. I'm sure I could do some research right now and look it up, but trying to pump this video out now because I've got a very busy work schedule this week and also shooting schedule, so this whole month really. 15 I'm reading. Okay, so what else? USB output for external recording is apparently not an option. The 3-year-old Sigma FP had this and some other companies have added it. It's really disappointing to me to see that Nikon didn't put this on a flagship. Hopefully this comes along with a firmware upgrade. I really won't claim to know, I can't claim to know the hardware specifics here, whether or not it's possible. But since most Nikon newer cameras are capable of live streaming over USB, and I'm sure that the Z9 will be as well, and that quality looks really good, it seems really strange to me that there's not some sort of option for live output to an external recorder. It just seems like this should be possible. Something like to a USB hard drive is what I'm talking about. So maybe that's something they're saving though. Maybe it's a deal they have with the memory card companies, or maybe it's something they're trying to leave that will be unique to the Z8 in terms of video specs. You should still be able to run an NVMe adapter from the CF Express slot. If you don't know, those are actually a thing. But these do seem not to have reached maturity yet, and almost certainly I would say it's going to have limits with the higher quality recording modes, as they already do with a lot of cameras. Let's see, also the Z9 is going to have a high-speed LAN, which sounds great. There's also a new app called NX Mobile Air coming, and it's for managing and transferring image files, but it allows wired connection to phones or other devices from the camera, so you can quickly transfer photos as well as voice memos and more, as Nikon said, and more, to FTP server or over your phone's network. And the app will have a free version or an enhanced $5 a month version. So the most exciting thing about this for me personally is that Nikon says the new app will be compatible with many of the most current Nikon cameras. Now, many is a big word, and if they just said a few or a couple, maybe it'd be the Z6 II and the Z7 II along with the Z9 and the forthcoming Z8. But many, I assume, means the original Z6, the Z7, the Z50, and quite likely a lot, or at least a handful, of the older DSLRs. Personally, I use Nikon Image Space and would love to see some sort of seamless integration and perhaps expansion of that app's capabilities, as I really like the flow of Image Space and how easy it is to manage and share albums privately or otherwise. I realize that NX mobile app is intended for much more far-reaching professional services. But yeah, I never liked sending stuff wirelessly to my phone, and if I could just turn my phone to airplane mode and save some battery while connected and transferring files much faster to my phone and image space, that would be great. So what else? There's also a fancy articulating screen on the Z9, and it's really funny to me because I was following, during the Olympics there was a sneak peek of the Z9, and I thought it was really funny that everyone thought that because the Z9 had a taped, or there was tape on the LCD screen, they thought it was a taped on LCD screen. It seemed really obvious to me, sorry, but it seemed really obvious to me that they were hiding articulation. But seriously, what I want to know is, when are cameras just gonna get detachable mini monitors? They can still have articulating brackets for manufacturers and third parties for attaching to the camera, but something like the GoPro 4 LCD backpack thing, only on a larger scale, with option to extend distance from the camera with a long HDMI or even wirelessly. I mean, shit, you could even use it as a full HDMI output for larger monitors or whatever, from the camera. It's HDMI that's on the camera that connects to the LCD. Anyways, of course, then people will start asking, why can't we have an HDMI in and out and just make this one-stop camera recording editing machine? Nah, that's probably not going to happen for another 10 years, but yeah. At least give us detachable screens. It's helpful in so many ways. Reduced weight when we only want to use the EVF, reduced heat, easy to replace a damaged screen by the user, and even upgradable perhaps, should the manufacturer or third parties want to release higher resolution, brighter screens at some point, maybe with better touch functionality. I would rather buy a camera with this capability and have to buy a screen than buy a camera with a non-detachable screen, honestly. I'm thinking about making a video just about an idea that I've had for a future camera. I actually made a couple of sketches of it a few years ago, and it's funny to see though, some of it is slowly actually becoming real, so maybe I should start a crowdfunding for it and just force the camera companies to fast forward to the final stage. And this is where I start a huge rant. I should have warned you actually about 30 seconds ago. So mostly that's it. Affiliate links down below. When you consider that film cameras reached a sort of peak quality when they were still pretty much fully mechanical as far as image quality goes, with little or no electronics, then in the 1990s a bunch of technologically advanced point and shoots were introduced, and of course Nikon and other camera companies started releasing flagships with this technology, and they're basically the same body though in ergonomics as now the Z9. So what I'm trying to say here though is we're actually now approaching this point of reclaiming the resolution that was lost when we went from film to digital. Film being by most calculations to be on good film with a good 35mm sensor about 200 megapixels, and we're definitely surpassing, or have already surpassed, low light performance. And of course video functions for these cameras far exceed what most could have even imagined 10 years ago, or really even 5 years ago. So basically, assuming progress is somewhat linear with computers and cameras, we are nearing the processing power and low light performance to have 200 megapixel files on a full frame camera. I mean, we already have it, but I'm saying it can become kind of standard. Yeah, I know it's not really needed, but neither is 45 megapixels. So listen, either come along with me on this kind of imagination light rail express for a few minutes, or don't. You please feel free to tune out. Assuming though that we do go there and we have this resolution, we're now basically, we've come to the resolution of Hollywood in its glory days, when man's Chinese theater was running 3 projectors and achieving something like 16K resolution, which the Blackmagic having 12K, we're just a hop away from there as far as resolution goes. It's got to come to full frame though, or even medium format or larger. So to come full circle to where I started this rant though, after we've reached those 2 milestones, what is really left is ergonomics and versatility, and in my opinion most important for the end stage technology, just for the record, complete technology being something most higher alien races know very well about, but most humans lack much perspective on due to the relative infancy of our technology in our brains. But anyways, the most important thing for end stage technology is longevity. The great news here is that concept is still ingrained rather, in most camera companies' higher management's souls, as those last great film cameras that had only a couple of watch batteries to run some metering and the AVF were built to last decades, if not centuries. So what the fuck am I trying to say? Well, basically, I think the Z9 represents more clearly than any other camera of 2021, or really the last 10, 20, 30, or even 40 years, end stage technology approaching, and with it, ergonomics, practicality, versatility, and longevity, which will begin to take the stage in splendid glory. See, other than tools that we use to create our creations, cameras, which are tools that not only capture life but capture pure human expression, have always been destined to be the first high technology creations to reach final stage evolution production. So much like musical instruments and the tools of painters, sculptors, and so on, cameras have just taken longer because they are absolutely the most complex tools of expression, made to capture memories, experience, dreams, visions, culture, life, pure abstract glorious imagination, and the universe stretched from now till most likely far after there are no longer any humans to view the images taken from cameras. They're able to do it in a very close to reality image, which is what's so amazing about them. Bringing you all back down to earth for a moment, what does it mean when cameras reach their peak and there's no longer a need to develop new cameras and marketing strategies? It means more and better lenses. It also means continued support and much faster repair services as parts become standardized. It also likely means a day when lens mounts become something like APS-C mount, full frame mount, medium format mount, and big mama's house mount, and little Mighty Mouse mount. But basically there will come a day, there should anyways, in a civilized world where there's no longer competing mounts that are basically the same thing for the same size sensors. So, and this is to finish this up, to round this round. So finishing up to just kind of round out this rant is this really holds true to everything that we create as humans, and it's something that is, I think, hard for a lot of people to imagine, which is why I went on the little alien rant, because I think that's the only way to visualize it, is that there's almost definitely alien races out there that have been at it for so much longer than us that they've forgotten the days of struggling to all basically agree on technology and the competing of it. It's something that naturally will eventually, if we don't destroy ourselves, evolve to a point though where things just become standardized and streamlined to a point that we can't even imagine right now. And it's a good thing. Honestly, in the perfect world, we're basically all on vacation and enjoying life and enjoying our planet without trashing it. That's it. That's where I'm in here, okay? So feel free to trash the planet a little bit more, buy a Z9 camera, give me a little money, because you know what? I think that I do more good than I do harm to this planet by being here and giving a little bit of perspective that you're not going to get elsewhere. Crazy as fuck, sure, but I'm not stupid. So I want to thank you very much for watching, and I'm sure this was edited down just so that I don't get locked up in an insane asylum, but I will be posting a lot more again. I had a hiatus here because of camera issues, but I have quite a few videos that I've been meaning to pump out, and I'm going to do it as well as I can, but expect a little bit of this sleepy face and stumbling over my words. I know I tend to do that anyways, but probably a little bit more right now, because it's the only option basically. If I want to get content out right now, I have to kind of push through some sleepless nights. And a lot of earthquakes. There's an earthquake right now, just a little one, but there's been a lot of earthquakes lately. So you might, hey, watch my channel, you might get lucky. You might see a big earthquake in this room, because we've had a few big ones lately, so yeah. Anyways, thanks for watching Film Studio Taku, and please don't forget to subscribe. Hit the like button if you like it. If you don't like it, go ahead. I get it. I'm weird. Anyways. Peace.